The unfair advantage. How to master your emotional state and win at life, even when you're freaking out. Have you ever prepared for weeks, known the material inside and out, only to have your mind go completely blank in the crucial moment? Whether it's a final exam, a career-defining job interview, or a high-stakes presentation, you know the feeling. The racing heart, the sweaty palms, and the frustrating inability to access the information you know is in your head. For years, we've been told this is a problem of preparation or intelligence. It's not. It's a problem of emotional control. In The Unfair Advantage, Dr. and entrepreneur Ali Erickson reveals the secret that underpins all high performance. Your ability to master your emotional state under pressure is more important than your knowledge or talent. Your emotions are not your enemy. They are the key to unlocking your full potential. This isn't another self-help book about positive thinking. This is a practical, science-backed toolkit for upgrading your mind. Inside, you will learn the 10-second reset, a simple neuroscience-backed breathing technique to instantly kill panic and regain composure before any stressful event. The freak-out flywheel. Understand the mechanics of your own anxiety spirals, and for the first time, learn exactly how to stop them. The premortem. A counterintuitive method used by top CEOs to slay anxiety by strategically imagining failure before it happens. How to turn anxiety into excitement. Learn the mental switch that top athletes use to transform pre-game jitters into peak performance. The end of procrastination. Reframe procrastination not as laziness, but as an emotional problem, and learn the simple tricks to overcome it for good. Packed with relatable stories, cutting-edge neuroscience explained simply, and actionable frameworks you can use today, The Unfair Advantage is your guide to turning stress into a superpower. Stop letting your emotions sabotage your success. It's time to gain the unfair advantage that will let you stay cool, focused, and effective when it matters most.
Chapter 1. The day I almost failed medical school, and it had nothing to do with my brain. The air in the examination hall had a unique smell. It was a sterile, unnerving cocktail of old paper, floor polish, and the faint collective scent of 200 slightly panicked medical students. You could almost taste the anxiety. In front of me lay the final paper for our second-year pharmacology module. This was it. The big one, the culmination of 1,000 late-night study sessions fueled by questionable instant coffee and an unshakable fear of disappointing everyone, including myself. I'd spent weeks preparing. My Anki flashcard deck was complete, my notes were color-coded to within an inch of their life, and I had mind-mapped every major drug class and its mechanism of action. I could recite the side effects of beta blockers in my sleep. I knew this stuff. Objectively, my brain was loaded with the correct information. The invigilator, a man with the mustache that seemed to command more authority than he did, announced, "You may begin." I turned over the paper, my heart doing a passable impression of a drum and bass track. I scanned the first question. A 68-year-old man presents with, and then nothing. It wasn't that I didn't know the answer. It was that I couldn't access the answer. It was like my brain, the very organ I'd been cramming with information for months, had suddenly been replaced with a dial-up modem from 1998. There was just static, a vague, fuzzy buffering symbol where a coherent thought was supposed to be. My palms started to sweat, leaving little damp marks on the exam paper. My breathing became shallow. My focus narrowed until the only thing I was aware of was the roaring in my ears and the thumping in my chest. I looked at the name of a common diuretic, and for a terrifying 10 seconds, I couldn't remember what it did. It was a word I had written, read, and recited literally hundreds of times. Now it looked alien, as if it were written in a language I'd never seen before. This, my friend, is the moment I want to talk about. The moment where the gap between what you know and what you can do feels like a chasm. It's a feeling I'm willing to bet you've experienced too. Maybe it wasn't a pharmacology exam, maybe it was a job interview for your dream company, a crucial presentation to your boss, a first date you really didn't want to mess up, or that moment you have to have a serious talk with a loved one. You've prepared, you're smart, you're capable, but in the heat of the moment, your brain seems to go on holiday, leaving your body to deal with the consequences. For years, I thought this was a personal failing. I thought I was just bad under pressure. I'd look at the calm, collected students who seemed to breeze through these exams and think they were just built differently. They had the clutch gene, and I apparently did not. But I was wrong. It took me years of medical training, reading countless studies on psychology and neuroscience, and a whole lot of trial and error, but I finally understood what was happening in that exam hall. The problem wasn't my brain power. The problem was my emotional state. Think of it like this. Your knowledge and intelligence are like a car's engine. For me, in that moment, the engine was a finely tuned, powerful machine ready to go. But my emotional state, my anxiety, my panic, my fear, was the driver. And that driver was having a full-blown meltdown, slamming on the brakes and the accelerator at the same time, cranking the steering wheel randomly and blasting the horn for no reason. It doesn't matter how good the engine is if the driver has lost control. Your emotional state is a multiplier for your intellectual abilities. When you're calm, curious, and confident, it's like a 1.5x multiplier. You feel smarter, you make connections faster, and solutions come to you more easily. But when you're stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed, it's a 0.5x multiplier. Your brain, in its infinite wisdom, decides that now is the perfect time to shut down all non-essential services. And apparently, recalling the mechanism of action of furosemide is considered non-essential. What's actually happening is a biological process that is, in its own way, a stunning evolutionary success story. It's called the fight or flight response. Deep in your brain, a little almond-shaped structure called the amygdala acts as your personal alarm system. When it senses a threat, a saber-toothed tiger, for instance, it hits the panic button. Your body gets flooded with adrenaline and cortisol, your heart rate skyrockets, and blood is diverted from your fancy, thoughtful prefrontal cortex, the bit that does the clever thinking, to your limbs so you can either punch the tiger in the face or run away very, very fast. This system is fantastic for surviving in the wild. It is, however, terribly inconvenient when the saber-toothed tiger is a sheet of A4 paper with some questions on it. Your amygdala isn't very sophisticated. It can't tell the difference between a genuine threat to your life and a threat to your ego. So the high-stakes exam, the job interview, the public speaking gig, they all trigger the same primitive life-and-death panic response. Your brain is literally preparing you to fight a predator when all you need to do is have a coherent conversation. It's a false alarm of epic proportions. So if you've ever felt that brain-blanking, heart-pounding panic in a high-pressure situation, I want you to know 2 things. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are a perfectly functioning human with a finely tuned survival system that just hasn't had a software update in about 200,000 years. You're not bad under pressure. You're just using an outdated internal operating system that was designed for a very different world. The good news? You can install an upgrade. You can learn to recognize when the false alarm is ringing, and instead of letting it spiral into a full-blown panic that sabotages your performance, you can learn to acknowledge it, manage it, and even use it to your advantage. I did manage to pass that pharmacology exam, by the way. I took a few deep breaths, stared at a crack in the ceiling for a solid minute, and a few of the answers slowly trickled back, just enough to get me over the line. But that day taught me a lesson far more valuable than anything in a textbook. Mastering your knowledge is only half the battle. The other half, the half they don't teach you in school, is mastering your mind. And that is the unfair advantage we're going to build together in this book. Let's get started.
Chapter 2, The Freak-Out Flywheel, How a Little Stress Becomes a Lot of Panic. It was supposed to be a sophisticated adult dinner party, the kind where you casually discuss interesting articles you've read, and the wine is decent enough that you pretend you can taste notes of oak and a hint of blackberry. I had decided in a moment of boundless optimism that I would bake a chocolate lava cake for dessert. I'd seen a video online and it looked foolproof. The fool, in this case, turned out to be me. The first sign of trouble was the batter. It had the consistency of cement. I told myself it was fine. "It's probably supposed to be thick," my internal narrator chirped, helpfully. The second sign was when I opened the oven door to check on my cakes and was greeted by two hockey pucks sitting forlornly in their ramekins. There was no llama. There was barely even cake. There was just solid, slightly burnt chocolate disappointment. My guests were due to arrive in 15 minutes. Now, a normal, well-adjusted human might laugh. They might shrug, order a dessert on Deliveroo, and have a funny story to tell. But my brain chose a different path. It initiated the launch sequence for what I now call the freak-out flywheel. Imagine a huge, heavy iron flywheel, like something you'd see in a Victorian factory. To get it moving takes a significant push. For me, that first push was the site of the failed cakes. Push. The flywheel groans and moves an inch. Then my internal narrator, that little voice inside my head that loves to add commentary to everything, chimed in. "Great, you've messed it up. You can't even follow a simple recipe." Push. The flywheel completes a slow, grinding rotation. That initial thought was then followed by another. "Everyone's going to be here any minute. They'll all know you failed. They'll think you're incompetent." Push. The flywheel picks up a little speed. My heart rate starts to climb. Why did I even offer to host? This was a stupid idea. I'm not a real adult. I can't even bake a cake. How do I even have a YouTube channel teaching people how to be productive when I can't bake a stupid cake? Push, push, push. Within about 90 seconds, that flywheel was spinning at a terrifying speed. My chest felt tight, my mind was racing, and the ruined dessert had transformed from a minor inconvenience to a catastrophic indictment of my entire character. The initial small stress had spun completely out of control and morphed into a full-blown, code-red panic. This is the freak-out flywheel in action. It's a vicious cycle where an initial emotional response is amplified by our own thoughts, which in turn generate a stronger emotional response, which is then amplified by even more dramatic thoughts. It's a self-sustaining engine of anxiety. The fascinating thing is that this isn't just a metaphor. There's some incredible science that explains why this flywheel spins so effectively. For a long time, scientists thought of emotions as simple, built-in circuits. You see a snake, the fear button in your brain gets pressed, and you feel fear. Simple. But pioneering psychologists like Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett have turned this idea on its head. Her theory of constructed emotion suggests that emotions aren't just automatic reactions. They are predictions and constructions that our brain makes. Here's how it works in ridiculously simple terms. Your brain is constantly receiving data from your body. Your heart rate, your breathing, your gut, how tense your muscles are. These are just raw physical sensations. At the same time, your brain is taking in data from the world around you, the context. It then takes all this data and asks a single question. What does this mean? It searches through your past experiences to find the best explanation. The answer it comes up with is the emotion you feel. Let's go back to my cake disaster. The physical sensation. My heart rate increased slightly due to the time pressure. My body felt warm from the heat of the oven. The context: guests are arriving soon, I'm supposed to be a competent host, there is a failed cake on the counter. The internal monologue, the storyteller: this is a disaster, you are a failure. My brain took all of this in. The slightly elevated heart rate, plus the context of the dinner party, plus the story I was telling myself, I am incompetent, equaled the emotion of panic. My brain constructed panic because it was the most logical explanation for all the data it was receiving. It was running a prediction. The last time I felt like this and told myself these kinds of stories, it was a panic-worthy situation. The internal monologue is the key. It's the storyteller that gives meaning to the raw physical sensations. If I had told myself a different story, like, haha, brilliant, I've created a new type of chocolate biscuit, this is a hilarious story for later, my brain would have constructed a totally different emotion. It would have combined the same physical sensations with a new narrative and concluded that the appropriate emotion was amusement, not panic. The freak-out flywheel is so powerful because each spin adds more evidence for the brain's prediction. The thought, I'm panicking, makes your heartbeat even faster. Your brain senses this and says, see, I was right to predict panic. Let's do more of that. This makes you even more certain that you're panicking, which adds another frantic push to the flywheel. And on it goes. Understanding this mechanism is like being given the keys to the kingdom. It means that the panic you felt during that exam, that interview, or that public speech wasn't just something that happened to you. It was something your brain, with the help of your internal storyteller, built. This is fantastic news. Why? Because if you built it, you can learn to unbuild it. You can learn to tell yourself a different story. You can learn to slow the flywheel down. You don't have to stop the first push. The initial spark of stress is often automatic. But you can stop the second, third, and fourth pushes. You can choose not to feed the beast. The first step, and the entire point of this chapter, is simply to become aware of the flywheel. The next time you feel that familiar lurch of anxiety starting to build, I want you to try to observe it. Picture that heavy iron wheel. Notice the thought that gave it the first push. Notice the story you're starting to tell yourself. Don't try to stop it just yet. Just watch it. Because understanding the mechanics of your own personal freakout machine is the first and most crucial step to dismantling.
Chapter 3, The Myth of the Cool Head, Why a Little Bit of Stress is Actually Good for You. For the longest time, my idea of peak performance was James Bond. You know the scene. The bomb has 30 seconds left on the timer. A laser grid is slowly moving towards him, and an army of henchmen is about to storm the room. What's Bond doing? He's calmly sipping his martini, adjusting his cufflinks, and delivering a witty one-liner before deactivating the bomb with 0.07 seconds to spare. His heart rate, presumably, remains at a steady 60 beats per minute. He is the epitome of the cool head. No stress, no panic, just icy calm. We worship this ideal. We're told to keep a cool head or to not let them see you sweat. The assumption is that the optimal state for any high-stakes situation is the complete and total absence of stress. But I'm here to tell you that this is a myth. And frankly, trying to achieve a Zen-like state of utter placidity before a big exam or an important presentation isn't just unrealistic. It's not even what you want. The goal isn't to feel nothing. The goal is to feel the right thing. Think back to your school days. What was your mental state during the most boring class on your timetable? For me, it was Monday morning history. I'd be slouched in my chair, half asleep, mind wandering. My stress levels were at a blissful 0. And my performance? Also 0. I retained absolutely nothing from those lectures because my brain was practically switched off. There was no engagement, no focus, no arousal. Now,
Contrast that with the freak-out flywheel we talked about in the last chapter. That's the other extreme. You're so overwhelmed with stress that your brain's performance nosedives, and you can't even remember your own name. Clearly, neither of these states is ideal. The sweet spot, it turns out, is somewhere in the middle. This isn't just a nice idea, it's a well-documented psychological principle known as the Yerkes-Dodson law. Picture a simple graph. On the bottom axis, you have arousal, which is just a fancy word for stress or stimulation. On the side axis, you have performance. When your arousal is very low, the boring history class, your performance is also very low. As you get a little more aroused, a little more invested, a bit of nervous energy kicks in, your performance starts to climb. You become more focused, more alert, more engaged. This upward trend continues until you reach a peak. This peak is the Goldilocks zone of stress. It's where the pressure is not too hot, not too cold, but just right. This is the state where you feel challenged, but not threatened. You're dialed in. It's that feeling of being in the zone. But if you keep cranking up the arousal past that point, if the pressure becomes too intense and the freak-out flywheel starts spinning, your performance drops off a cliff. This is the point where alertness turns into anxiety and focus turns into panic. Your aim, then, is not to eliminate arousal, but to keep yourself at the peak of that curve. You don't want to be Bond with a flatlining heart rate. You want to be a top athlete, standing on the starting blocks before the most important race of their life. Do you think Usain Bolt had a resting heart rate before the Olympic 100-meter final? Of course not. His heart was likely hammering in his chest. His palms were probably sweaty. He had butterflies in his stomach. But here's the crucial difference. He didn't interpret those feelings as panic. He interpreted them as readiness. This brings us to one of the most powerful mind hacks you will ever learn: reframing stress as excitement. Think about it. The physical symptoms of anxiety and excitement are almost identical. Heart pounding? Check. Butterflies in your stomach? Check. Shallow breathing? Check. A surge of energy? Check. The only thing that separates them is the story you tell yourself, the label you put on the feeling. Your body is giving you a surge of energy to prepare for a challenge. You get to decide whether you call that surge anxiety or excitement. Fascinating research from Harvard Business School by Alison Woodbrooks confirms this. In her studies, she had participants perform a stressful task, like singing in public or solving a difficult math problem. Before the task, one group was told to say, "I am calm." Another group was told to say, "I am excited." The results were remarkable. The I am excited group consistently performed better than the I am calm group and a control group. Why? Because trying to go from high arousal, anxiety, to low arousal, calm, is a huge leap. It's fighting against your body's natural response. But going from high arousal, anxiety, to high arousal, excitement, is just a simple cognitive shift. You're not changing the feeling. You're changing the label. You're working with your body, not against it. I use this all the time. Before I give a big talk or walk into an important meeting, I can feel the jitters. The old me would have interpreted that as, "Oh no, I'm nervous. This is going to be bad." The new me consciously stops and tells myself a different story. My heart is beating faster because my body is getting ready. It's giving me the energy I need to perform well. This isn't fear, this is excitement. It sounds ridiculously simple, but it is a complete game changer. It takes the same raw material, the physical sensations, and builds a more empowering emotion. It stops the freak-out flywheel from gaining momentum and instead channels that energy into productive focus. So let's kill the myth of the cool head. Stress is not your enemy. Apathy is your enemy. Panic is your enemy. Stress is just energy. It's the jolt that wakes your brain up and says, "Pay attention, this matters." Your aim is not to eliminate the orchestra in your chest. It's to recognize that the music is not a funeral dirge. It's a battle cry. It's your body's way of saying, let's do this. Your job is to learn how to be a good conductor. You don't want to eliminate the feeling, you want to harness it. You want to learn how to dance with the stress. In the next section, we'll start learning the steps.
Chapter 4. The 10-second reset, how to instantly reclaim your composure. The 5 minutes before I walk on stage to give a talk are interesting. It doesn't matter how many times I do it, the feeling is always the same. There is a quiet hum from the audience on the other side of the curtain. A technician hands me a glass of water that feels impossibly cold in my slightly sweaty hands. My mouth suddenly feels as dry as the Sahara Desert. In my head, the freak-out flywheel is trying its absolute best to get spinning. What if you forget your opening line? What if the jokes don't land? What if you trip walking on stage? The initial push has been made. My heart rate starts to climb, and my body is getting that familiar surge of energy we talked about. Now, as we know from the last chapter, this energy can be reframed as excitement. But sometimes, especially in the seconds before a high-pressure event, you need something more. You need a way to slam the brakes on the physical symptoms of panic before they even begin. You need a manual override switch for your own nervous system. For years, I didn't think such a thing existed. I thought you just had to ride out the wave of jitters. And then, through the work of neuroscientists like Dr. Andrew Huberman at Stanford, I discovered a technique that has genuinely changed my life. It is the single most effective, fastest-acting tool I have ever found for calming down in real time. It's called the physiological sigh, and it takes less than 10 seconds. This isn't some woo-woo, visualize your happy place technique. This is a direct biological intervention. It's a physical lever you can pull to tell your brain and body, hey, everything is actually okay. You can stand down the emergency response. It's so simple, it's almost laughable. Here's how you do it. Let's try it right now, wherever you are. Take a deep, full breath in through your nose. Fill your lungs completely. Now, when you feel like you can't possibly inhale anymore, take another sharp, short sniff of air in on top of that first breath. Then, let it all go with a long, slow, extended exhale through your mouth. Empty your lungs completely. That's it. That's the whole thing. Do it one more time. A big inhale, a little top-up inhale, and a long, slow exhale. Feel that? That little wave of calm that washes over you? That's not a placebo. That's pure physiology. So what magical sorcery is this? Let's geek out for a minute, because when you understand why it works, it becomes even more powerful. Inside your lungs, you have hundreds of millions of tiny little air sacs called alveoli. Think of them like tiny balloons. This is where the crucial exchange of oxygen into your blood and carbon dioxide out of your blood happens. When you get stressed or anxious, your breathing becomes shallow. Over time, some of these little balloon-like alveoli deflate and collapse on themselves. When this happens, the levels of carbon dioxide in your blood start to rise. Your brain senses this increase in CO2 and interprets it as a sign of danger, because historically, suffocating was a pretty bad outcome. This triggers the panic response, the faster heart rate, the anxiety, the freak-out flywheel. It's a vicious cycle. Stress causes shallow breathing, which causes CO2 buildup, which causes more stress. The physiological sigh is the circuit breaker. That double inhale, the big breath followed by the little sniff, is the most efficient way to pop all those collapsed alveoli back open. You're maximizing the surface area of your lungs. Then the long extended exhale allows you to offload the maximum amount of carbon dioxide from your bloodstream in one go. You are literally, physically expelling the trigger for your stress response. You are telling your brain, in its own language, that you are not, in fact, suffocating. The all-clear signal is sent. The emergency brakes are applied to your nervous system, and your heart rate begins to slow down almost instantly. This is my go-to tool. Before I hit record on a YouTube video, before I walk into a difficult meeting, if I wake up in the middle of the night with my mind racing,
2 or 3 physiological sighs, and I can feel the flywheel grind to a halt. It is my 10-second reset button. Now, the physiological sigh is your emergency brake, but it's good to have a few other tools in your kit for different situations. Another one I love, which is great for maintaining a state of calm focus over a longer period, is box breathing. This one was popularized by the Navy SEALs, so you know it's been pressure tested. It's incredibly simple. Inhale for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4. Exhale for a count of 4. Hold at the bottom for a count of 4. Repeat. That's the whole cycle. Visualize yourself drawing a square with your breath. It imposes order on your chaotic breathing pattern and gives your mind something simple and rhythmic to focus on, pulling your attention away from the anxious thoughts. It's less of an instant panic button and more of a cruise control for your nervous system. The takeaway here is profound. You are not a passive victim of your emotional state. You have direct physical control over it. Your breath is the remote control for your nervous system. For the longest time, my breathing was on auto mode, and when I got stressed, it would just contribute to the problem. Now I know I can switch to manual at any time. This is the first tool for your new operating system. It's powerful, it's portable, and it's always available to you. You don't have to let the flywheel spin out of control. You can stop it, and it can all start with a single conscious breath.
Chapter 5. Name it to tame it. The surprising power of saying how you feel. There was a period a few years ago, right as the YouTube channel was gaining serious traction and our business was starting to feel like a real business with salaries and responsibilities and everything, when I felt constantly, vaguely, overwhelmingly stressed. It wasn't a sharp, acute panic like in the exam hall. It was a low-grade, heavy fog of anxiety that followed me everywhere. It was the feeling of being pulled in a dozen different directions at once, the tsunami of unread emails, the pressure to create better videos, the financial health of the company, managing a growing team. It all swirled together in my head into a single, amorphous blob of dread. I'd wake up with it and I'd go to bed with it. I tried to power through, leaning on the productivity systems that had served me so well. I time-blocked my calendar, I made to-do lists, I focused on my most important tasks, but it was like trying to organize fog. You can wave your hands around all you want, but the mist is still there, clouding your vision and making everything feel damp and heavy. Then, one evening, feeling particularly swamped, I did something incredibly simple, almost out of desperation. I opened a new document on my laptop, titled it Brain Dump, and just started writing. I didn't try to be coherent, I didn't worry about spelling or grammar, I just let the chaotic swirl of thoughts in my head spill out onto the page. I'm worried that the next video won't do well. I feel like I'm letting the team down because I'm not giving them clear direction. I'm anxious about that big invoice we have to pay next month. I haven't replied to that important email from 3 days ago, and now it feels awkward. I feel like an imposter who doesn't know how to run a business. I'm tired. On and on it went for about 15 minutes. A messy, unfiltered, slightly embarrassing transcript of my own anxiety. When I finally stopped and read it back, something remarkable happened. The fog started to lift. The giant, terrifying, amorphous blob of overwhelm wasn't a blob at all. It was a collection of smaller, distinct, and, most importantly, specific worries. The monster in the dark, once I'd turned on the light, was just a pile of laundry. It was still there, and I still had to deal with it, but it wasn't a monster anymore. I felt instantly lighter, calmer, more in control. What I had accidentally stumbled upon is a neuroscientific phenomenon known as affect labeling. It's a fancy term for a simple act, putting your feelings into words. And it is one of the most effective ways to slam the brakes on an emotional spiral. Let's go back to our friends in the brain, the amygdala, the screaming panic alarm, and the prefrontal cortex, the calm, rational CEO.
When you're stuck in that fog of anxiety, your amygdala is running the show. It's on high alert, flooding you with feelings of threat and unease. But when you sit down and articulate the feeling, when you find the words to describe what's going on inside you, you engage your prefrontal cortex. You force the rational, thinking part of your brain to get involved. Neuroimaging studies like those conducted by UCLA psychologist Matthew Lieberman have shown this in action. When participants were shown upsetting images and asked to choose a word to describe the emotion they felt, the activity in their amygdala actually decreased. At the same time, activity in their right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain associated with vigilance and inhibiting behavior, increased. In simple terms, when you name the feeling, the thinking part of your brain puts a metaphorical hand on the shoulder of the emotional part and says, "I see you. I've got this." It turns down the volume on the alarm. Think of your amygdala as a screaming toddler in a supermarket. It doesn't know what it wants. It's just overwhelmed and making a lot of noise. Trying to ignore it or tell it to just calm down is useless. But if you get down on its level and say, "I know you're feeling frustrated right now because you can't have the chocolate," something magical happens. The toddler might still be upset, but the screaming often subsides. They feel seen and understood. The act of labeling the emotion soothes them. This is exactly what you are doing for your own brain when you journal. The vague feeling of "R" becomes, "I am feeling anxious about my presentation because I'm afraid I will forget my words." That specificity is power. R is impossible to solve, but anxious about a presentation is something you can work with. You can practice more. You can make cue cards. You can do the physiological sigh before you start. You have concrete actions you can take. This is why your journal, or even just a blank page in a notebook, is one of the most powerful tools for emotional clarity you can possibly own. It's not just a diary for recording what you had for lunch. It's a laboratory for your mind. It's a safe space to perform this simple act of neuroscience on yourself anytime you need it. So here's your mission, should you choose to accept it. The next time you feel that fog of stress, anxiety, or overwhelm creeping in, don't just power through. Stop. Grab a piece of paper or open a new document. Set a timer for 10 minutes and just write. Start with the prompt, "What's on my mind right now?" Don't judge it, don't edit it, just name it. Turn the light on and see what's really there. You might be surprised to find that the monster you were so afraid of isn't a monster at all.
Chapter 6. The Pre-Mortem. How to slay your anxiety before it even starts. If you've ever planned anything more complicated than a trip to the supermarket, you know the feeling. It's the quiet hum of anxiety that sits underneath the excitement. It's the voice that whispers, "But what if? What if I don't pass the exam? What if the job interview goes horribly? What if this product launch is a total flop?" Our natural tendency is to swat these thoughts away. We're told to be positive and visualize success. We treat these negative what-ifs as toxic intruders that will jinx the entire operation if we give them even a moment of our attention. But what if I told you that systematically and deliberately thinking about failure is one of the most powerful things you can do to ensure success and calm your anxious mind? Welcome to the pre-mortem. This isn't a term I made up. It's a powerful technique developed by the psychologist Gary Klein, and it's used by high-performing teams at companies like Google and Microsoft to de-risk major projects. A typical post-mortem happens after a project has failed, where everyone gets together to figure out what went wrong. A pre-mortem is the opposite. It happens before the project even starts. Here's the setup. You get your team in a room and say, "All right, everyone, I have a crystal ball. I've looked into the future, and 1 year from now, this project has failed. It has failed completely and catastrophically. Now, for the next 10 minutes, I want everyone to write down every possible reason why it failed." The shift is subtle, but the effect is profound.
Suddenly, instead of being afraid to voice concerns for fear of sounding negative, everyone is given permission to unleash their inner pessimist. It becomes a creative exercise in catastrophic thinking. Now, let's take this out of the corporate boardroom and apply it to something more fun. Let's say you're planning the big trip of the lifetime, a 2-week adventure in Japan. You're excited, but you also have that low-grade anxiety about all the things that could go wrong. Let's run a pre-mortem. Step 1. Look into the crystal ball. Imagine it's the day after you get back from Japan. The trip was a complete and utter disaster. You're sitting at home, miserable, vowing never to travel again. Step 2. Ask why. Why was it a disaster? Let your brain run wild. I missed my flight because I got the departure time wrong. I lost my passport and wallet on the Tokyo subway. I ran out of money halfway through the trip. The language barrier was so bad, I couldn't even order food and lived off 7-Eleven snacks. All my photos are terrible because my phone died and my charger didn't work. I got completely lost in Kyoto with no internet access and had a full-blown meltdown. Step 3. Turn what if into what then. Look at your beautiful list of disasters. This list is not a prediction of the future. It is your roadmap for preparation. You can now go through it one by one and turn your vague fears into a concrete action plan. This is where you transform the paralyzing question of what if into the empowering question of what then. Fear, what if I miss my flight? Plan, okay, then I will double-check the flight times right now and put them in my calendar with 3 alerts. I will book my taxi to the airport the day before. I will set 2 alarms. Fear, what if I lose my passport? Plan, then I will take a photo of it on my phone, save a copy in my email, and leave a physical copy in my hotel room. I'll also look up the address of my country's embassy in Tokyo just in case. Fear, what if I run out of money? Plan, then I will bring a backup credit card, notify my bank of my travel dates beforehand, and have a small stash of emergency cash hidden in a separate bag. Do you see what's happening? The anxiety isn't just disappearing, it's being dismantled. The pre-mortem works because it speaks directly to your brain's threat detection system. As we've discussed, your amygdala hates uncertainty. A vague, unknown threat, like the trip might go wrong, is terrifying. It leads to that free-floating anxiety because your brain doesn't know what to prepare for. But when you do a pre-mortem, you take that vague threat and make it specific. You're telling your brain, hey, I see the potential threats too, but look, I have a plan for them. You are giving your rational prefrontal cortex a job to do. It can now create strategies and contingency plans, which sends a powerful signal to your emotional amygdala that the situation is under control. You've turned the unknown into a series of known, manageable risks. This technique is a superpower. Use it before an exam by imagining why you might fail, like, I ran out of time on section B, and then creating a plan. Then I will practice timing myself and will allocate exactly 45 minutes to that section. Use it before a job interview, like, I flubbed the tell me about yourself question, and then prepare a crisp, compelling answer. Conventional wisdom tells us to ignore the possibility of failure. The pre-mortem teaches us to look it straight in the eye. It's not about being pessimistic. It's about earning the right to be optimistic. By engaging in a little bit of structured pessimism beforehand, you build a robust plan that allows you to walk into the real situation with a genuine, well-founded sense of peace of mind.
Chapter 7. The highlight reel versus the behind the scenes. Redefining your measures of success. I want to confess something. When my YouTube channel first hit 100,000 subscribers, I should have been ecstatic. By all external measures, I was successful. I had the silver plaque from YouTube to prove it. People in the comments were calling me an inspiration. My friends were impressed. My internal reality? I was a nervous wreck. I had become pathologically obsessed with the YouTube Studio app on my phone. I'd refresh it dozens of times a day, my mood rising and falling with the real-time view count. A video that performed well would give me a short-lived, fizzy hit of dopamine. A video that underperformed would send me into a spiral of self-doubt. Have I lost it? Was that last video just a fluke? Everyone probably thinks I'm a fraud. I was living my life on a roller coaster designed by a faceless algorithm. The external highlight reel showed a confident, productive creator living his best life. The behind the scenes was a guy anxiously refreshing his stats, his self-worth completely outsourced to the whims of the YouTube viewership. This, right here, is one of the most insidious traps of modern life. We are constantly comparing our messy, chaotic, unfiltered behind the scenes to everyone else's perfectly curated highlight reel. Think about it. You scroll through Instagram and see perfectly framed travel photos, not the stressful 8-hour flight delay that came before them. You look on LinkedIn and see a former colleague's flashy new job title, not the dozen rejections they got before landing it. You see the A+ exam result your classmate posted, not the nights of anxiety and panic they endured while studying. We are comparing our 100% of reality, our doubts, our failures, our burnt lava cakes, with their top 1% of success. It is a game that is mathematically impossible to win, and it is shredding our emotional well-being. The core of the problem is that we've been conditioned to peg our sense of success to external metrics. These are the things we can't fully control. The number of likes on a post, the grade an examiner gives us, whether we get the promotion, what other people think of us. When our self-worth is tied to these outcomes, we are placing our happiness in the hands of others. We become a ship without a rudder, tossed around by the unpredictable waves of external validation. It's exhausting. It's the perfect fuel for the freak-out flywheel. So how do we get off this roller coaster? We have to stop playing their game. We have to build our own. We have to consciously shift our focus from external validation to internal metrics. Internal metrics are the things that you have 100% control over. They aren't about the outcome. They are about your process, your effort, and your character. This is about creating your own definition of a win. Let's look at how this works in practice. External metric, old scoreboard. Internal metric, your new scoreboard. My video got 500,000 views. I spent 15 hours researching and scripting to make the best video I could possibly make. I got an A on my exam. I followed my study plan with 90% consistency for 3 straight weeks. I got the job. I prepared thoroughly for the interview and answered every question honestly and to the best of my ability. Everyone at the party thought I was witty and charming. I was brave enough to start a conversation with 3 new people. Do you feel the shift? The old scoreboard is all about results you can't guarantee. The new scoreboard is all about the effort you put in. On the old scoreboard, you can do everything right and still lose. On your new scoreboard, if you put in the effort, you always win, regardless of the outcome. This is the mindset of every creator, entrepreneur, and artist who plays the long game. They fall in love with the behind the scenes. The author James Clear, who wrote the phenomenal bestseller Atomic Habits, didn't focus on hitting the bestseller list. He focused on his internal metric of never miss writing a new article on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The success was a byproduct of his relentless consistency. The world's best chefs don't obsess about getting a 5-star review. They obsess about perfectly sourcing their ingredients and mastering a new technique. The 5-star review is just a lagging indicator of the excellence they pursued in the kitchen. Adopting this mindset is profoundly liberating. It takes the power away from the algorithm, the examiner, and the critics, and places it squarely back in your hands. It allows you to feel successful every single day just by showing up and doing the work you said you would do. So here is your challenge. Take one area of your life where you feel the pressure of external validation.
It could be your studies, your career, a creative hobby, or even your social life. Now I want you to quite literally design your new scoreboard. Write down the one key external metric that causes you anxiety. Example, getting X number of followers. Then write down 2 or 3 internal metrics that you have complete control over. Example, post one thing I'm proud of each week. Spend 20 minutes learning a new skill in this area every day. This is your new game. These are your new rules. The external world will continue to flash its shiny, distracting scoreboard at you. Let them. You know the truth. The real prize isn't the trophy they hand you at the end. It's the person you become during the behind the scenes.
Chapter 8. The High-Stakes Conversation. How to Stay Cool When Things Get Heated. I had to have the talk. Not that talk. This was arguably more terrifying. I had to give some very difficult, critical feedback to a member of my team. This was someone I genuinely liked and respected, someone who was brilliant and talented, but whose performance in one specific area was starting to cause problems for everyone else. For about a week, I put it off. The mere thought of initiating the conversation sent a jolt of anxiety through my stomach. The freak-out flywheel started its ominous low hum. What if they get defensive and angry? What if I hurt their feelings and demotivate them completely? What if they think I'm a terrible boss? What if I am a terrible boss? Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe I should just leave it. This is the classic conflict avoidance dance. We know a conversation needs to happen, but the anticipated emotional discomfort is so great that we do anything to avoid it. We let resentment build, we complain to others, or we bottle it up until it explodes in a messy, unproductive confrontation. The old me would have done exactly that, but armed with the tools we've been discussing, I knew there was a better way. High-stakes conversations, whether with a boss, a partner, a family member, or a client, are not something to be feared. They are a skill to be learned. And like any skill, having a good framework makes all the difference. Here is the 4-step framework I use to navigate these situations. It's a way to integrate our tools into a real-world scenario. I call it the SAFE framework. S. Strategize before you start. You would never walk into a final exam without studying, so why would you walk into a crucial conversation unprepared? This first step is your study session, and it happens long before you say a single word to the other person. Name it to tame it. First, I opened my journal and did a brain dump, just like we talked about in Chapter 5. I wrote down all my anxieties and fears about the conversation. This helped me separate the real issue from the emotional fog surrounding it. The issue wasn't, this person is difficult. It was, deadlines are being missed, which impacts the rest of the team's ability to get their work done. This clarity is crucial. Run a pre-mortem. Next, I used the technique from Chapter 6. I asked myself, okay, this conversation has gone horribly wrong. Why? I imagined the worst-case scenarios. They cry, they yell, they quit. Then, for each one, I asked, what then? How would I handle that reaction calmly and constructively? This process transforms your vague dread into a series of manageable possibilities. It arms you with a plan, which is the ultimate antidote to fear. Redefine your win. Finally, I use the lesson from Chapter 7 to set my internal metric for success. The win was not getting them to admit that they are wrong. The win was to clearly and kindly articulate the problem and its impact, and to leave the conversation with the other person feeling respected and understood. This puts the outcome entirely within my control. A. Actively listen first. This is the most counterintuitive step. You've prepared all your points, and your instinct is to launch straight into them. don't. The fastest way to put someone on the defensive is to make them feel like they are being lectured. Instead, start by inviting them to share their perspective. This does two things. It shows respect, and it gives you critical information you might have missed. You could say something like, "I wanted to chat about the workflow on Project X. How are you feeling about it from your end?" Then just listen. Don't interrupt. Don't formulate your rebuttal while they're talking. Just seek to understand. Use reflective phrases like, "So what I'm hearing you say is that you're feeling overwhelmed by the number of requests you're getting." This shows you're engaged and de-escalates tension before it even starts. F. Frame with I. Once you've listened, it's your turn to speak. The golden rule here is to use I statements, not you statements. You statements feel like an accusation and trigger defensiveness. I statements express your reality without assigning blame. Instead of, "You missed the deadline again," try, "I get concerned when deadlines are missed because it impacts the rest of the team's ability to get their work done." Instead of, "You were rude in that meeting," try, "I felt uncomfortable with the way the feedback was phrased in the meeting earlier." The magic formula is, when specific objective action happens, I feel your emotion because the impact it has on you. This structure is non-negotiable. It's not an attack. It's a clear and honest expression of your experience. E. Execute and exit if needed. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, things get heated, the flywheel starts spinning, voices get raised, and the rational parts of everyone's brains check out. In these moments, the most productive thing you can do is to call a tactical timeout. This is not admitting defeat. It's a strategic move to preserve the conversation and the relationship. You need a pre-planned exit phrase you can use. For example, "This is a really important conversation, and I value your perspective. I can feel myself getting a bit flustered, and I want to make sure I'm hearing you properly. Could we please take a 15-minute break and come back to this with a clear head?" This demonstrates self-awareness and a commitment to a positive outcome. Then, during that break, you have a job to do. Use the 10-second reset. Do 2 or 3 physiological sighs. Do a few rounds of box breathing. Recenter yourself so you can re-engage calmly. So, how did the talk go? I followed the framework. I prepared, I listened first, I framed my points with I, and I was ready to pause. The conversation was still tough, but it wasn't a disaster. It was a collaboration. By seeking to understand first, I learned about obstacles they were facing that I hadn't been aware of. By framing my concerns without blame, they were able to hear the feedback without shutting down. We ended up co-creating a solution. The takeaway is this: you don't have to choose between being nice and being effective. You can be both assertive and empathetic. You can state your needs clearly while also honoring the humanity of the person you're speaking with. Difficult conversations aren't battles to be won. They are puzzles to be solved. And when you have the right framework, you can solve them without breaking a sweat.
Chapter 9. The Blank Page and the Blinking Cursor. Overcoming the Fear of Not Being Good Enough. The cursor blinks and blinks and blinks. It's a tiny digital judge tapping its foot impatiently on the vast, empty expanse of the blank page. "Well," it seems to say, "I'm waiting. Got anything good for me today?" Every creator, every student, every professional knows this feeling. It's the moment you sit down to do the work, to write the essay, to draft the business proposal, to script the video, and your brain suddenly decides it would be a fantastic time to do absolutely anything else. For me, this used to be a weekly ritual. I'd sit down to write a YouTube script, my calendar dutifully blocked out for deep work. The blinking cursor would appear, and then the dance would begin. "You know, this desk is a bit cluttered," my brain would offer. "A clean workspace is a clean mind, after all." So I'd spend 10 minutes tidying up. Desk clean, I'd sit back down. Blink. Blink. A fresh cup of coffee would really help me focus. Off to the kitchen. Coffee brewed, I'd return. Blink. Blink. I should probably check my email one last time just in case there's anything urgent. We all know how that ends. 45 minutes later, I'd have an empty inbox, but also an empty page. This is procrastination. And for most of my life, I believed what we're all taught to believe, that procrastination is a symptom of laziness. It's a character flaw, a time management problem. If I just had more willpower, if I were just more disciplined, I could beat it. I was wrong. It took me years to understand the truth. Procrastination is not a character flaw. It is an emotional regulation problem. Let's say that again because it's a genuine life raft for anyone who's ever beaten themselves up for putting things off. Procrastination is not about laziness. It's about feelings. Think about it. We don't procrastinate on things we enjoy, like watching our favorite TV show or eating a piece of cake. We procrastinate on tasks that stir up uncomfortable emotions. When I sat down to face that blinking cursor, what was I really feeling? Fear. What if this video isn't as good as the last one? Anxiety. There's so much to do, I don't even know where to start. Self-doubt. Who am I to be giving people advice on this topic? Perfectionism. I need this to be brilliant, and I'm not sure I can make it brilliant. That blank page wasn't just a blank page. It was a mirror reflecting my fear of not being good enough. Faced with this tidal wave of negative feelings, my brain, our wonderful, ancient, survival-oriented brain, did what it's designed to do. It sought to protect me. It looked for a way to avoid the discomfort. It wanted a quick mood repair. And what feels better than the anxiety of a blank page? Literally anything. Checking email feels productive. Tidying your desk gives you a small, satisfying win. The problem isn't time management. The problem is that the task itself is emotionally charged. So if procrastination is an emotional problem, the solution must also be an emotional one. The answer is to lower the stakes. Our mistake is that we look at the task and see the entire intimidating mountain. Write a 5,000-word essay. Create a groundbreaking video. The sheer size of it is overwhelming. The key is to make the first step so laughably small, so utterly non-threatening, that your brain doesn't have a chance to trigger the fear response. The goal is to make it so easy you can't say no. James Clear calls this the 2-minute rule. The idea is to scale down any new habit or daunting task until it takes less than 2 minutes to complete. Read more books becomes read one page. Go to the gym becomes put on my running shoes. And for me, write the video script becomes open a new document and write a single terrible sentence. That last one is my favorite. I give myself permission for the first sentence to be absolute garbage. Something like, this is a video about a thing, and I'm going to talk about it now. It's a ridiculous sentence, but guess what? The page is no longer blank. The cursor is no longer blinking at me from an empty void. The inertia has been broken. The fear barrier has been breached. And once that first imperfect step is taken, the second step is infinitely easier. That terrible sentence can be deleted and replaced with a slightly better one. The emotional hurdle is behind me. This is the ultimate takeaway. The monster of procrastination isn't slain by a heroic charge of willpower. It's tricked. It's disarmed by a move so small and unassuming that it doesn't even register as a threat. The perfectionism that tells you, don't start until you know you can do it perfectly, is the enemy. It will keep you frozen at the starting line forever. The antidote is the small, imperfect step. So the next time you find yourself in a standoff with the blinking cursor, don't try to be a hero. Be a trickster. Lower the stakes. Ask yourself, what is the smallest possible step I could take right now? Open the document. Write one word. Put one dish in the dishwasher. Put one running shoe on. The best way to get over the fear is to take a small, imperfect step. Because that first step isn't about making progress on the task. It's about proving to yourself that you can start. And starting is everything.
Chapter 10: Building Your Anti-Fragile Life: How to Bounce Back Stronger from Anything. A few years into running our education company, 6Med, we had an idea that we thought was pure genius. We would create the ultimate BMAT course, a single, all-encompassing digital product for students applying to medical school. It would have thousands of practice questions, hours of video tutorials, and multiple mock exams. We spent months and a not insignificant amount of money developing it. We were convinced it would be our flagship product. We launched it, and it completely and utterly flopped. The sales were abysmal. The feedback we got was that it was too expensive, too big, and too intimidating. It was a failure. My initial reaction was a gut punch of disappointment. The familiar story started playing in my head. You've wasted so much time and money. You misjudged the market. You've failed. For a while, we felt fragile. The shock of the failure felt like a crack in our business. But what happened next is the entire point of this chapter. We had two choices. We could scrap the project and try to forget our embarrassing failure, or we could listen to the shock. We chose to listen. We took the feedback, broke the ultimate course down into smaller, more affordable modules, and relaunched them individually, and they flew off the shelves. That failure ended up being one of the most important things that ever happened to our business. The initial shock didn't just fail to break us, it made us stronger. It gave us priceless information, forced us to be more creative, and ultimately led to a more successful and customer-friendly product line. This is the difference between being resilient and being anti-fragile. We hear a lot about resilience, the ability to bounce back from adversity. If you're resilient, a shock hits you and you return to your original state, like a plastic cup that you squeeze and then it pops back into shape. That's good, but anti-fragile is something else entirely. The term was coined by the author and risk analyst Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Something that is anti-fragile doesn't just resist shocks, it benefits from them. It gets stronger when exposed to volatility, stress, and randomness. Think of it this way. Fragile, a porcelain teacup. If you drop it, it shatters. Resilient, a rubber ball. If you drop it, it bounces back to its original state. That's good. But anti-fragile is your immune system. Exposure to a pathogen, a stressor, triggers a response that makes the system stronger and better prepared for future attacks. The in-the-moment tools we've discussed so far, the physiological sigh, the pre-mortem, effect labeling, are your emergency response kit. They are fantastic for handling the shock as it happens. But building an anti-fragile life is about creating a foundational system that is so robust it actually learns and grows from the inevitable stresses of life. Your ability to handle the pressure of that one high-stakes moment is determined less by what you do in that moment and more by the foundation you've been building every day leading up to it. This foundation rests on 4 pillars you've heard of before, but I want you to see them in a new light as essential systems for emotional regulation. 1. Sleep, your nightly mental maintenance. We think of sleep as rest for a tired body, but it's really maintenance for an anxious brain. While you sleep, your brain is hard at work clearing out metabolic waste and, crucially, processing emotional experiences. Neuroimaging studies show that a lack of sleep fires up the amygdala, your panic alarm, and weakens the connection to your prefrontal cortex, your rational CEO. A sleep-deprived brain is by definition an emotionally volatile brain. Prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep isn't a luxury. It's the most fundamental anti-fragile practice there is. Exercise, a controlled dose of good stress. Physical exercise is, quite literally, the practice of putting your body under voluntary stress. You lift a heavy weight or run up a hill, which causes micro tears in your muscles and increases your heart rate.
Your body responds not just by repairing the damage, but by overcompensating, making the muscles stronger than before. It is the perfect metaphor for anti-fragility. On a chemical level, exercise burns off excess cortisol, the stress hormone, and releases endorphins, which act as natural mood elevators. It's like running a pre-mortem for your body every day, making it better equipped to handle the involuntary stress life throws at you. Nutrition, the fuel for your brain. Your brain is an energy-hungry organ. What you feed it directly impacts its function and your mood. You don't need a complicated diet, just a simple principle. Avoid the blood sugar roller coaster. A meal high in refined sugars and simple carbs will cause your blood sugar to spike and then crash, leaving you feeling tired, irritable, and emotionally unstable. Hello, hanger. A diet built around whole foods, protein, and healthy fats provides a steady stream of energy, creating a stable physical platform for a stable mind. Connection, your outsourced support system. When we feel stressed or like we've failed, our instinct is often to withdraw and isolate ourselves. This is the worst thing we can do. Social connection is a critical part of our anti-fragile system. Sharing your struggles with trusted friends or family does two things. First, it allows you to name it to tame it out loud, turning down the volume on your amygdala. Second, it provides perspective. Your friend can remind you that your catastrophic failure is actually a minor setback. They act as an external prefrontal cortex when your own is offline. A strong social support network is your emotional safety net. These 4 pillars are not just healthy habits, they are the bedrock of your emotional control system. The tools and tricks in this book are the software, but these pillars are the hardware, and even the best software in the world can't run on crashing, overheating hardware. The ultimate unfair advantage isn't just knowing how to weather the storm. It's about building a life through your daily, unglamorous choices about how you sleep, move, eat, and connect that gets stronger every time the wind blows. It's about building a system where setbacks are not just survivable, but desirable, because you know that on the other side of every challenge is a stronger version of you.
Conclusion: your life is not an exam. We started this journey together in a stuffy examination hall, my heart pounding in my chest, convinced that I was about to fail pharmacology. For so many of us, that's what life feels like. A series of high-stakes, timed tests where our performance is judged, our knowledge is questioned, and our future hangs in the balance. We move from the exam hall to the job interview, to the sales pitch, to the first date, to the difficult conversation. We see each one as a new pass-fail test, a test of our intelligence, our charm, our competence. We spend our lives cramming for these tests, terrified of failure, our self-worth swinging on the pendulum of success and defeat. But the single most important lesson I hope you take from this book is this: your life is not an exam. At least, it's not the kind of exam you took in school. The old model, the closed book, timed high-pressure test, where failure feels final, that is a game you no longer have to play. You have now upgraded your internal operating system. You have the tools to rewrite the rules. Life is still a test, but it is now an open book exam. And in this new exam, you get to define everything. Think about it. It's open book. When you feel the panic rising, you're not alone with your thoughts. You can pull out your tools. You can use the physiological sigh to calm your body. You can label your emotions to tame them. Your notes are always with you. You write the questions. You no longer have to answer the questions the world throws at you. Are you successful? Are you smart enough? You get to define your own metrics. Your new scoreboard is based on effort, learning, and character, not external validation. The most important questions are not, did I win? But did I try my best? And what did I learn? Failure is just data. In a pass-fail test, a failure is a dead end.
In an open book exam, a wrong answer, a flopped project, an awkward conversation, a moment of panic is simply feedback. It's incredibly valuable data that you can analyze with a pre-mortem and use to make your next attempt stronger. You are now anti-fragile. Stress and setbacks are the very things that make you grow. Collaboration is encouraged. You don't have to face the page alone. You can lean on your support system, building an anti-fragile foundation of connection that makes every challenge more manageable. This shift in perspective is everything. It takes you from being a nervous test taker at the mercy of the examiner to being the curious, open-minded researcher of your own life. Your first step. I know we have covered a lot of ground. It would be overwhelming and, frankly, a terrible idea to try and implement all of these things at once. So I want to end with a simple call to action. Just pick one. Don't try to build your anti-fragile life, master difficult conversations, and become a procrastination ninja all by tomorrow morning. Just pick one tool from this book that resonated with you. Maybe it's the 10-second reset. For the next week, just commit to using the physiological sigh whenever you feel a spark of stress. Maybe it's the pre-mortem. Before your next big meeting or project, just take 15 minutes to imagine failure and make a plan. Maybe it's the 2-minute rule. The next time you face the blinking cursor, just challenge yourself to write one terrible sentence. Treat it as an experiment. Be a scientist in the laboratory of your life. Observe what happens without judgment. The goal is not perfection. It has never been perfection. The goal, always, is progress. You now possess an arsenal of tools that most people will go their entire lives without discovering. You have the ability to understand your emotions, to work with them, and to stay in control when it matters most. This is not just a small improvement. This is a genuine, life-altering, unfair advantage. Now go and use it. Here's to your progress.